What happens when a bride's private confession becomes a public scandal that rocks an entire country? Amara never wanted this marriage. Forced to wed the cold, mysterious Korean CEO Kang Dae-Hyun, she thought her nightmare couldn't get worse, until one careless phone call changed everything. Her frustrated words, "He can't even make me scream in bed," go viral overnight, turning her into Korea's most humiliated woman. But the real shock? Her husband's chilling response that reveals secrets darker than she ever imagined. Behind his icy exterior lies a former Mafia heir haunted by tragedy, and Amara is caught in a deadly game she never knew existed. When ruthless enemies strike and family betrayal cuts deep, she must choose: escape the cage or become the queen beside the king. This isn't just a marriage, it's war, and love has never been more dangerous. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe now and drop a comment with your predictions. The phone slipped from Amara's trembling fingers and clattered onto the marble floor of the penthouse bathroom. She stared at her reflection in the gold-framed mirror, mascara streaking down her brown cheeks, her wedding dress still clinging to her body like a beautiful prison. The white lace felt suffocating. Everything felt suffocating. Just 3 hours ago, she'd stood at an altar in front of 300 strangers, repeating vows to a man whose face she'd only seen twice before today. Kang Dae-Hyun, 40 years old, CEO of one of Korea's largest tech conglomerates, and according to the whispered rumors that followed him everywhere, a man with connections to the Korean underworld that polite society pretended not to notice. Her cousin's voice still echoed in her ears from the phone call she just ended. "Girl, how was the wedding night? Did he rock your world?" Amara had laughed bitterly, pacing the enormous bathroom while her husband sat in the living room, silent as a tomb. "Rock my world? Shinyu, the man hasn't even touched me. We got back to this apartment 2 hours ago, and he went straight to his office. No kiss, no honeymoon talk, nothing. He can't even make me scream in bed." The words had tumbled out in frustration, in anger and humiliation. She'd needed to tell someone how completely rejected she felt, how this arranged marriage her parents had pushed her into had stripped away every shred of her dignity. Her family back in Nigeria had sold her future for business connections and immigration papers, and Dae-Hyun had treated their wedding night like a corporate merger. Amara bent down to retrieve her phone, her fingers shaking as she wiped away fresh tears. She needed to pull herself together. She needed to figure out how to survive this nightmare she couldn't escape. But she had no idea that in 18 hours, her private moment of weakness would become Korea's biggest scandal, and that the cold, distant man sitting in the other room would reveal himself to be something far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. The next morning arrived with Seoul's harsh winter sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Amara woke up alone in the massive master bedroom, wrapped in silk sheets that smelled like expensive detergent and nothing else. No warmth, no presence. Dae-Hyun had never come to bed. She found him in the kitchen, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, drinking coffee while reading something on his tablet. His face could have been carved from stone. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that revealed nothing, black hair styled perfectly. He looked up when she entered, his gaze sweeping over her silk nightgown with complete indifference. "Good morning," he said in Korean, his voice deep and controlled. "Coffee is ready. I have meetings all day." Amara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed despite being fully covered. She'd studied Korean for 6 months after learning about this arrangement, but his formal tone made every word feel like a wall between them. "We should talk," she said in careful Korean, her Nigerian accent softening the consonants. "About us. About this marriage." Dae-Hyun set down his tablet with deliberate precision. "What would you like to discuss?" "Everything," Amara said, frustration bleeding into her voice. "Why you married me. Why you won't even look at me. Why I feel like a prisoner in a luxury jail." Something flickered in his eyes, too quick to identify. Pain, anger, regret. Then it vanished behind his mask of control. "This marriage serves a purpose," he said carefully. "Your safety and your family's security. That's what matters. The rest is unnecessary." "Unnecessary?" Amara's voice rose despite her intention to stay calm. "I'm your wife. We're supposed to build something together, even if we didn't choose this. But you treat me like I'm furniture." Dae-Hyun stood abruptly, And for the first time, Amara saw a crack in his composure. His jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice carried an edge that made her step back. You want honesty? Fine. I didn't ask for this either. I didn't want another woman in my life, another person I could fail to protect. But your family needed help, and this marriage solved problems for both of us. That's all it needs to be. Before Amara could respond, his phone buzzed urgently. Then again, and again. Dae-Hyun's expression shifted from controlled anger to something darker as he looked at the screen. What is it? Amara asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned the tablet toward her, and Amara's entire world collapsed. The headline screamed across Korea's largest entertainment news site. CEO Kang's foreign bride humiliates husband, shocking audio leaked. Below it, a recording. Her voice, crystal clear, speaking in English with Korean subtitles. He can't even make me scream in bed. The article had been published 30 minutes ago. It already had 200,000 views and climbing. Amara's legs gave out. She grabbed the counter to keep from falling, her vision swimming with panic and disbelief. No. No. No, no. How did they? I was talking to my cousin. It was private. How did anyone? Someone was listening, Dae-Hyun said, his voice now completely empty of emotion. Or recording. It doesn't matter how. It's out there now. He scrolled through his phone, his face unreadable as notification after notification flooded in. Every major news outlet has picked it up. Social media is exploding. My company's PR team is calling emergency meetings. Amara felt like she was drowning. She thought of her parents back in Lagos, who would see this. Her sisters. Her church community. Everyone would know. Everyone would judge her. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't mean for this to happen. I was just upset. I was just talking. I didn't know anyone. Stop apologizing. Dae-Hyun cut her off, but not harshly. He set his phone down and looked at her directly for the first time since she'd met him, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't anger. It was something more complex, something almost protective. This isn't your fault, he said quietly. Someone targeted you deliberately. They wanted to create exactly the situation. Why would anyone do that? Dae-Hyun's expression hardened. Because making us look weak serves certain interests, and because they underestimate both of us. His phone rang, and he answered in rapid Korean, his tone shifting to something cold and authoritative. Amara caught words about press statements, legal action, security protocols. When he hung up, he turned back to her with decision in his eyes. Get dressed. Business formal. We're holding a press conference in 2 hours. A press conference? Amara's voice cracked. I can't face reporters about this. I can't. You can and you will. Dae-Hyun stepped closer, and Amara caught the scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive. Because hiding makes you look guilty. Because running makes you look weak. And because I'm not letting anyone destroy you over this. Why do you care? The question escaped before Amara could stop it. You said this marriage was just business. You've barely spoken to me. Why would you defend me now? Dae-Hyun's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Amara thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said something that changed everything. Because you're my wife, and nobody touches what's mine. The press conference was a nightmare Amara would never forget. 50 reporters crammed into the conference room of Dae-Hyun's company headquarters, cameras flashing like lightning, voices shouting questions in Korean and English. Amara sat beside her husband at a long table, her hands clasped in her lap to hide their shaking, wearing a navy blue dress that Dae-Hyun's assistant had brought to the apartment. Dae-Hyun handled the opening statement with brutal efficiency, his Korean crisp and unyielding. Amara understood enough to catch the key points: invasion of privacy, illegal recording, legal action pending. He spoke like a man used to commanding rooms, and gradually the chaos settled into structured questions. Then a reporter in the front row stood, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper questions. Mr. Kang, your wife's comments suggest dissatisfaction with your marriage. Some are questioning whether this union was forced, whether Mrs. Kang is happy here in Korea, whether this marriage is even legitimate. The room went silent. Every camera turned toward Amara, waiting for her to crack. Before Dae-Hyun could respond, Amara leaned forward to her microphone. Her heart pounded, so hard she thought everyone could hear it, but she forced her voice to stay steady. I made a private comment to a family member during a difficult moment, she said in Korean, her accent thick, but her words clear. Every new bride has adjustments. Every new marriage has challenges. What I said was taken out of context and illegally recorded. But let me be clear, I chose to come to Korea. I chose to marry my husband. And I'm asking for the privacy and respect that any couple deserves. It wasn't entirely true, but it was what needed to be said. Beside her, Dae-Hyun's hand moved under the table and found hers, squeezing once. The gesture was hidden from cameras but unmistakable. Amara squeezed back, and something shifted between them in that moment, a wordless understanding that they were in this together now, whether they wanted to be or not. The press conference ended 20 minutes later. Dae-Hyun's security team escorted them through a side exit to avoid the crowd, but Amara still heard the shouted questions following them down the hallway. In the car back to the penthouse, silence stretched between them until Dae-Hyun finally spoke. You handled that well. I wanted to throw up the entire time, Amara admitted, staring out the window at Seoul's gleaming skyline. Most people would have. You didn't. Amara turned to look at him, studying his profile in the afternoon light. Why did you hold my hand? Dae-Hyun's expression remained neutral, but his fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. It seemed necessary. That's not an answer. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you looked terrified. And alone. I didn't want you to feel alone. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in Amara's chest. It wasn't love. They barely knew each other, but it was the first crack in the ice that separated them. Thank you, she said softly. Dae-Hyun nodded once, and they drove the rest of the way in a silence that felt different than before. Less hostile, more uncertain, but also more real. When they returned to the penthouse, Dae-Hyun's phone rang immediately. He answered in clipped Korean, his expression darkening with each passing second. When he hung up, he turned to Amara with something new in his eyes. Something that looked almost like fear. Pack a bag. Essential items only. We're leaving in 30 minutes. Leaving? Why? What's happening? Dae-Hyun moved to a painting on the wall, pressed something hidden in the frame, and revealed a safe. He pulled out a handgun and checked the magazine with practiced efficiency that made Amara's blood run cold. The scandal made us look vulnerable, he said, his voice tight. And certain people have been waiting for exactly that kind of opening. My security team just intercepted chatter about a potential threat against you. A threat? What kind of threat? Who would? The kind of people who operate outside the law. Dae-Hyun's eyes met hers, and Amara saw the truth he'd been hiding behind his cold exterior. The kind of people I used to work with before I tried to go legitimate. They don't forget, and they don't forgive. Amara's world tilted sideways. You're saying you were actually part of the Mafia? Those rumors are true. Were, Dae-Hyun emphasized. Past tense. I've been clean for 5 years. But my father was a syndicate boss, and I was his heir until I walked away. That history doesn't disappear just because I wanted to. And you married me knowing I'd be in danger? Anger replaced Amara's fear. You brought me into this without telling me what I was walking into. Dae-Hyun's jaw clenched. I married you because you were already in danger. Urano's money to the wrong people, Amara. Serious money. They were going to use you as collateral, kidnap you and hold you until she paid. The only way to protect you was to bring you under my legal protection as my wife. The marriage certificate makes you untouchable by their usual methods. The room spun. Amara gripped the back of a chair, processing information that rewrote everything she thought she knew. My Aunt Blessing. She's the reason for all this. She made deals with a rival syndicate, borrowed money for her business, couldn't pay it back. They were planning to grab you during your visit to Seoul, use you to force her hand. I intercepted the plan, offered an alternative, a legitimate marriage that would put you under my protection and satisfy their need to send a message. So I was never a bride, Amara said bitterly. I was a pawn in a Mafia negotiation. You were a target, Dae-Hyun corrected, his voice rough. And I made you safe, or I thought I did, but the scandal changed the equation. If they think our marriage is weak, if they think you're just a contract bride who might run, then the protection it offers becomes questionable. Amara wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to call her family and demand answers. But Dae-Hyun's hand on the gun and the urgent tension in his shoulders told her there wasn't time for any of that. "Where are we going?" she asked instead. "Safe house outside the city. Just until my team can assess the threat level and put better security measures in place." "And then what?" Dae-Hyun looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Then we figure out how to make this marriage real enough that nobody questions it again. Because your life depends on it, Amara. And whether you believe me or not, I'm not letting anything happen to you." 30 minutes later, they were on a private highway heading into the mountains outside Seoul. Dae-Hyun drove with focused precision, his eyes constantly checking mirrors. Amara sat in silence, her mind racing through everything he told her. Her aunt had sold her out. Her marriage was a protection deal. Her husband was a former Mafia heir. And now someone wanted to hurt her because of a stupid leaked recording. "Tell me about her," Amara said suddenly. Dae-Hyun glanced at her. "Who?" "The woman you lost. The reason you stopped touching women. I saw it in your eyes at the press conference, when that reporter asked if our marriage was legitimate. You flinched." The car swerved slightly before Dae-Hyun corrected. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "Her name was Min-ji," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "We were engaged. She knew what my family was, knew the risks, but she loved me anyway. Or she thought she did. When I told my father I was leaving the syndicate, there were consequences. A rival group saw an opportunity in the chaos. They took Min-ji to force my return." Amara's heart clenched. "What happened to her?" "She died before I could get there. They didn't mean to kill her. She was just leverage. But she fought back, tried to escape, and in the chaos." Dae-Hyun's voice broke slightly. "I found her in an abandoned warehouse. She was already gone." "I'm so sorry," Amara whispered. "I swore I'd never let my life endanger another woman again. I swore I'd stay alone, stay cold, stay in control. And then your aunt's situation landed on my desk, and I saw a way to help someone without getting emotionally involved. A business arrangement. Clean. Simple. Safe." "But it's not safe," Amara said. "And I'm not Min-ji. I won't be a ghost you're trying to protect because you failed to protect her." Dae-Hyun's eyes flashed. "You don't understand what these people are capable of. Then tell me. Stop protecting me from the truth, and tell me what we're really facing." Before Dae-Hyun could respond, his phone exploded with alerts. He glanced at the screen and cursed in Korean, pressing the accelerator harder. "What is it?" Amara demanded. "They're not waiting. They're coming now." The safe house was a traditional Korean hanok hidden in a mountain valley, surrounded by pine trees and accessible only by a narrow dirt road. Dae-Hyun pulled the car into a concealed garage and immediately began checking weapons and security systems that Amara hadn't known existed beneath the house's rustic exterior. "Stay away from windows," he instructed, handing her a phone. "This connects directly to my security team. If anything happens to me, you press the red button and run. There's a path through the backwoods that leads to a neighbor's property. Old man, used to be military. He'll help you." "Nothing's going to happen to you," Amara said firmly, surprising herself with her certainty. Dae-Hyun paused in his preparations, looking at her with something like wonder. "You sound sure." "I am. Because we're going to survive this together, and then you're going to tell me everything. Every detail about your past, about what we're facing, about why you really married me. And then we're going to figure out what this marriage actually is." A ghost of a smile touched Dae-Hyun's lips. "You're not what I expected." "Good. Because I'm done being underestimated." They waited in tense silence as the sun set over the mountains, casting long shadows through the hanok's paper windows. Dae-Hyun monitored security feeds on his laptop while Amara tried to process everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. Her entire life had been upended, but strangely, she felt more awake than she had in months. More present. More herself. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Dae-Hyun looked up from his laptop. "Yes. At the press conference, when you held my hand, that wasn't just for show, was it?" His expression softened slightly. "No, it wasn't." "Then what was it?" Before Dae-Hyun could answer, his laptop screen erupted with red warning alerts. Movement detected on the access road. 3 vehicles approaching. Unauthorized. They're here, Dae-Hyun said, his voice shifting to something cold and lethal. He grabbed his gun and moved to the window, peering through a crack in the paper screen. 8 men. Professional setup. They know what they're doing. Terror flooded Amara's system, but she forced herself to stay calm. What do we do? You hide. There's a crawl space under the kitchen floor. Get in there, and don't make a sound no matter what you hear. I'm not hiding while you fight alone. Dae-Hyun turned to her, and the man she saw now was nothing like the cold CEO she'd married. This was someone dangerous, someone capable of violence, someone who'd survived in a world Amara couldn't imagine. You're not trained for this, he said. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe, Amara agreed. But I'm not hiding like a helpless victim. Give me something I can use. Show me how to help. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Dae-Hyun made a decision that would change everything. He grabbed a second gun from his bag, smaller, lighter, and quickly showed Amara the basics. Safety off. Aim center mass. Squeeze, don't pull, expect recoil. If anyone gets past me, he said, his hand steady on hers as he positioned her grip, you shoot first and question later. Understand? Amara nodded, her heart hammering. I understand. The sound of breaking glass shattered the tense silence. The assault had begun. What happened next was chaos that Amara would remember in fragments, loud and terrifying and impossibly fast. Dae-Hyun moved like someone who'd been trained for combat, taking position near the door with his gun raised. The first attacker came through the window, and Dae-Hyun fired twice without hesitation. The man went down. Amara screamed before she could stop herself, the reality of violence hitting her like a physical blow. Don't think, Dae-Hyun commanded without looking back. Just stay alert. More men poured through windows and doors, moving with tactical precision. Dae-Hyun fought with brutal efficiency, but he was outnumbered. Amara saw him take a hit to the shoulder, saw blood bloom across his white shirt, saw him stumble but keep fighting. Then one of the attackers broke through Dae-Hyun's line and rushed toward Amara. She raised the gun with shaking hands. The man was huge, scarred, terrifying. He smiled when he saw her fear, confident she wouldn't shoot. He was wrong. Amara pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her over, and the sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet caught the attacker in the leg, and he went down screaming. Amara stood frozen, unable to believe what she'd just done, unable to process the blood and the noise and the overwhelming wrongness of it all. Amara, get down! Dae-Hyun's voice broke through her shock. She dropped to the floor, just as bullets shattered the wall above her head. Dae-Hyun was suddenly there, pulling her behind the kitchen counter, his body shielding hers. She could feel his heart hammering against her back, could smell gunpowder and blood and his cologne mixed together. You did good, he said into her ear, his voice strained with pain. You did exactly right. Now stay down while I finish this. But Dae-Hyun was injured and exhausted, and the attackers kept coming. Amara realized with sick certainty that they weren't going to win this fight. Not both of them. Not without help. Her hand found the emergency phone in her pocket. She pressed the red button without hesitation. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She picked up the gun again, checked the safety like Dae-Hyun had taught her, and said, I'm not letting you die for me. We fight together, or we go down together. Dae-Hyun looked at her with something between horror and admiration. You're insane. Probably, Amara agreed. Now tell me what to do. They held the line together for 3 more minutes that felt like hours. Amara didn't think, didn't let herself feel anything except the need to survive. She fired when Dae-Hyun told her to, dropped to cover when he pushed her down, reloaded when he pressed fresh magazines into her hand. They moved as a unit, anticipating each other's actions with instinct born from pure necessity. And then, finally, sirens wailed in the distance, and the remaining attackers fled, leaving their wounded behind. When silence fell, Amara was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Dae-Hyun caught her before she collapsed, pulling her against his chest despite his own injuries. His blood soaked into her clothes, warm and terrifying. You're hurt, she gasped, finally allowing herself to feel the terror she'd been suppressing. You need a hospital. I've had worse, Dae-Hyun said, but his voice was weak. You saved us, Amara. You actually saved us. We saved each other, she corrected, looking up at his pale face. And don't you dare pass out on me now. I just survived a gunfight. I'm not ready to be a widow. Dae-Hyun laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. Still don't know if you're brave or crazy. Both, Amara said firmly. Definitely both. The police arrived first, then ambulances, then Dae-Hyun's security team looking guilty and frantic. Amara refused to leave Dae-Hyun's side as paramedics worked on his shoulder, holding his hand while he gritted his teeth through the pain. I need to tell you something, he said as they loaded him into the ambulance. Tell me at the hospital, Amara said, climbing in beside him despite the paramedics' protests. No, now. In case, he winced as the ambulance started moving. In case something happens, you need to know. I didn't just marry you to protect you from your aunt's debts. I married you because when I met you, for the first time since Minji died, I felt something. And it terrified me. So I told myself it was just business, just protection, just duty. But it wasn't. It isn't. Amara's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between the contract signing and tonight, this stopped being fake for me. I'm saying that when I held your hand at the press conference, I wasn't thinking about appearances or strategy. I was thinking about how much I wanted to protect you, how much I wanted to earn the right to hold your hand for real. I'm saying that you're falling in love with me, Amara finished softly. Dae-Hyun's eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. Yes, even though I promised myself I wouldn't. Even though it's dangerous and complicated and possibly the worst timing in history. Yes. Amara felt tears spilling down her cheeks, hot and overwhelming. You really are terrible at timing. I know, Dae-Hyun said, managing a weak smile, because I was planning to tell you the same thing at a much more romantic moment. Maybe after we'd actually had a proper conversation and you'd apologize for being so cold and distant. But now you've ruined my dramatic confession with your bleeding and your ambulance declarations. Dae-Hyun's eyes widened. You feel it too. I didn't want to, Amara admitted. You're everything I never wanted, complicated, dangerous, emotionally closed off. But then you held my hand when I was terrified, and you taught me to fight instead of hide, and you looked at me like I mattered more than anything else in the world. So yes, you absolute disaster of a man, I'm falling in love with you too. The paramedic working on Dae-Hyun's shoulder rolled her eyes. You two need therapy, not an ambulance. They both started laughing, which made Dae-Hyun groan in pain, which made Amara hold him tighter. The paramedic muttered something about impossible patience, but Amara caught the small smile on her face. At the hospital, Dae-Hyun's shoulder wound required surgery to remove bullet fragments and repair torn muscle. Amara waited in a private room that his security team had secured, surrounded by guards who eyed her with newfound respect. Apparently, word had spread about the foreign bride who'd fought off Mafia attackers alongside their boss. 6 hours later, Dae-Hyun was wheeled out of surgery. The doctor said he'd need weeks of recovery, but would make a full recovery. Amara collapsed into a chair beside his bed and finally let herself cry, from fear, from relief, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming emotional chaos of the last 2 days. When Dae-Hyun woke up, groggy from anesthesia, his first word was her name. I'm here, Amara said, taking his uninjured hand. I'm not going anywhere. Good, he murmured. Because we have a lot to figure out. Like what? Like how to actually be married. How to build something real instead of just surviving. How to, he paused, his eyes focusing on her with drugged earnestness. How to make you scream for the right reasons. Amara's face went hot. You did not just say that while high on pain medication. I'm saying everything I've been afraid to say, Dae-Hyun continued, his words slightly slurred. Like how beautiful you looked at our wedding. Like how I wanted to kiss you when you stood up to those reporters. Like how watching you fight tonight was the sexiest and most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Like how I want to actually consummate this marriage, but only when you're ready, only when you trust me completely, only when. Okay, you're definitely saying things you'll regret when you're sober, Amara interrupted, her heart pounding. But for the record, I'm not opposed to any of that. When you're healed, and we've had actual dates, and you've proven you can handle emotions like a normal human being. Dae-Hyun smiled, his eyes drifting closed. Deal. But I'm holding you to it. I wouldn't expect anything less, Amara whispered, leaning down to kiss his forehead. Sleep now. We'll deal with the rest tomorrow. But tomorrow brought its own complications. The scandal hadn't disappeared, it had exploded. The attack on Dae-Hyun and Amara had been caught on security cameras and leaked to the press. Now the story wasn't just about a humiliating recording. It was about a foreign bride who'd fought off Mafia attackers, about a CEO with a dangerous past, about a marriage that was clearly much more complicated than anyone had realized. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. Some called Amara a hero. Others called her a liability. The Korean public was divided, fascinated, and unable to look away from the scandal that kept developing new chapters. And then, 3 days after the attack, Amara's aunt called. Amara stared at her phone for a long moment before answering. Dae-Hyun, still recovering in the hospital bed, watched her with concern. "You don't have to take it," he said. "I do," Amara replied, "because I need to hear what she has to say for herself." She answered the call, putting it on speaker so Dae-Hyun could hear. "Amara, my dear niece," Aunt Blessing's voice was syrupy sweet, false concern dripping from every word. "I've been seeing the news. Are you okay? I've been so worried." "Worried?" Amara repeated, her voice flat. "You've been worried about me." "Of course. You're my favorite niece. When I heard about the attack, I was devastated. Those terrible criminals, how dare they target you?" "The criminals you owed money to," Amara said, her anger building. "The ones you sold me to. Don't pretend you don't know exactly what happened." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "I don't know what lies your husband has been telling you, but—" "Stop!" Amara cut her off. "I know everything. I know about your debts. I know about the deal you made. I know that you were planning to use me as collateral until Dae-Hyun married me to protect me. So don't you dare pretend to care about me now. Amara, you have to understand I was desperate. My business was failing. I needed money. I didn't know they would." "You didn't care," Amara corrected, her voice shaking with fury. "You didn't care what happened to me as long as you got your money. You sacrificed me without a second thought. I'm your aunt." Blessing's voice turned sharp. "I raised you when your parents were working overseas. I fed you, clothed you, educated you. You owe me." "I owed you respect and gratitude," Amara said. "But you destroyed any right to those things when you treated me like property. We're done. Don't call me again. Don't contact my family. You're dead to me." She ended the call before Blessing could respond, her hands shaking with adrenaline and anger. Dae-Hyun reached for her hand. "Are you okay?" "No," Amara said honestly. "But I will be. Because I'm not alone anymore. Because I have you." "Yes," Dae-Hyun said softly. "You do." Over the next 2 weeks, Amara's life transformed in ways she'd never imagined. Dae-Hyun recovered enough to leave the hospital, and they returned to the penthouse that felt different now, less like a prison, more like a home they were building together. They talked for hours, sharing stories about their pasts, their fears, their dreams. Dae-Hyun told her about growing up in the shadow of his father's violence, about his first kill at 16, about the guilt that haunted him even now. Amara told him about her childhood in Lagos, about feeling invisible in her large family, about dreams of becoming a fashion designer that her parents had dismissed as impractical. She showed him her sketches, nervous about his reaction, and nearly cried when he immediately commissioned her to design a line of clothing for his company's upcoming charity gala. They learned to cook together, laughing when Dae-Hyun's attempt at jollof rice turned out hilariously wrong. They watched Nigerian movies and Korean dramas, translating for each other and arguing good-naturedly about which country had better entertainment. They went on actual dates, carefully supervised by security teams, but still real dates with conversation and laughter and slowly building intimacy. And gradually, carefully, they built trust. One night, 3 weeks after the attack, Amara woke up screaming from a nightmare. She was back in the safe house, surrounded by men with guns, unable to move or fight or save herself. Dae-Hyun was there immediately, pulling her into his arms despite his still healing shoulder. He didn't tell her it was just a dream or that everything was fine. He just held her, letting her cry, his hand stroking her hair with infinite patience. "I keep seeing his face," Amara gasped. "The man I shot. I keep thinking about how I could have killed him, how I actually wanted to kill him in that moment. That's normal, Dae-Hyun said quietly. That's trauma. But you did what you had to do to survive. There's no shame in that. You don't have nightmares anymore. I do, he admitted. About Min-ji. About my father. About all the things I did when I was part of that world. They don't go away completely, but they get easier to live with. Especially when you have someone to hold on to. Amara pulled back slightly to look at his face in the darkness. Do you think we'll ever be normal? Have a normal marriage? We'll never be normal, Dae-Hyun said with a slight smile. We're too complicated for that. But we can be real. We can be honest. We can be partners in every sense of the word. If that's what you want. It is, Amara whispered. More than anything. Dae-Hyun's thumb brushed away her tears. Then that's what we'll build. Together. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Amara didn't pull away. She met him halfway, and their first real kiss was nothing like the mechanical peck they'd shared at their wedding ceremony. This was soft and tentative and achingly sweet, a promise, a question, an answer all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dae-Hyun rested his forehead against hers. We should probably talk about what happens next. You mean the part where we actually consummate this marriage? Dae-Hyun's eyes darkened with heat and something deeper, tenderness mixed with desire. Only if you're ready. Only if you trust me. I trust you, Amara said, and realized she meant it completely. I'm ready. I want this. I want you. What happened next was nothing like Amara had imagined. Dae-Hyun was patient and gentle, checking in with her constantly, making sure she was comfortable even when his own desire was obvious. He kissed every inch of her skin like she was precious, worshipped her body like she was a treasure he'd been given to protect. And when he finally moved inside her, when they became one in the most intimate way possible, it felt like more than just physical connection. It felt like coming home. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, sweaty and satisfied and beautifully vulnerable, Amara couldn't help but laugh. What's funny? Dae-Hyun murmured against her neck. I was just thinking about that stupid recording. About how I said you couldn't make me scream. I take it back. Dae-Hyun lifted his head to look at her, his eyes glinting with amusement and masculine pride. I noticed. The neighbors definitely noticed too. Amara smacked his chest lightly. You're impossible. You love it, he countered, catching her hand and kissing her palm. I love you, Amara corrected. Even though you drive me crazy. I love you too, Dae-Hyun said seriously. Even though I never planned to. Even though it scares me. Even though it complicates everything. I love you, Amara Kang. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. That's a bold promise from a man who barely spoke to me 2 months ago. I'm a man of contradictions, Dae-Hyun said with a small smile. You'll get used to it. I'm counting on it, Amara said, pulling him down for another kiss. The next morning brought a development that would change everything again. Dae-Hyun's lawyer called with news. They traced the source of the leaked recording. It wasn't a random eavesdropper or opportunistic hacker. It was someone close to the family. Someone who'd known exactly where to plant the listening device and how to cause maximum damage. Dae-Hyun's younger brother, Kang Min-ho. I don't understand, Amara said as Dae-Hyun paced the living room, his jaw tight with tension. Why would your brother sabotage us? Because he's been waiting for me to fail, Dae-Hyun said bitterly. When I left the syndicate, when I went legitimate, he saw it as betrayal. He's been running the family business in the shadows, building power while I built my company. He wanted to prove that I couldn't escape our father's legacy, that I'd eventually be pulled back into that world. And the attack. Probably him too. Or at least, he knew it was coming and let it happen. He wanted to see if I'd revert to my old ways. If I'd become the killer I used to be. Amara felt cold. What do we do? Dae-Hyun stopped pacing and looked at her with something like wonder. You said we. You didn't ask if I was going to handle it. You asked what we're doing together. We're partners now, Amara said firmly. Whatever happens, we face it together. So I'm asking again, what do we do? Dae-Hyun crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We end this. We expose him, cut off his power base, make sure he can never threaten you or anyone else again. But I need you to know it's going to be ugly. It's going to bring up parts of my past I'd rather keep buried. The press will have a field day. Let them, Amara said. We've survived worse. Have we? We survived an arranged marriage, a public scandal, a Mafia attack, and my terrible cooking. I think we can handle one vengeful brother-in-law. Despite the tension, Dae-Hyun laughed. Your cooking isn't that bad. Liar, Amara said affectionately. But I love you anyway. The confrontation with Minho happened 3 days later, orchestrated by Dae-Hyun with the precision of a former syndicate heir. They met in a private room at a traditional restaurant, just the three of them and security posted outside. Minho looked like a younger, crueler version of Dae-Hyun. Same sharp features, but with an edge of cruelty that Dae-Hyun had shed years ago. So the rumors are true, Minho said, eyeing Amara with interest. The foreign bride can actually fight. I'm impressed. We know what you did, Dae-Hyun said, his voice dangerously quiet. The recording, the attack, all of it. Minho smiled. Can you prove it? I don't need to prove it in court, Dae-Hyun replied. I just need the syndicate elders to know. And they do. As of this morning, you've been voted out of leadership. Your assets are frozen. Your connections have been informed that you're persona non grata. You're done. The smile disappeared from Minho's face. You can't do that. You left. You gave up your right to make those decisions. I left the day-to-day operations, Dae-Hyun corrected. But I never gave up my seat at the table. The elders owe me too much for that. And they don't appreciate members who endanger legitimate businesses or put innocent people in danger. You violated code. You paid the price. Minho's face contorted with rage. This is because of her. You were supposed to stay cold. Stay alone, stay out of our way. But she made you soft. She ruined everything. No, Dae-Hyun said, his hand finding Amara's under the table. She saved me. She made me remember what I was fighting for when I left that world. And she's stronger than you'll ever understand. She's a liability, Minho spat. A weakness. Amara had stayed silent until now, but something in his tone finally broke her patience. She leaned forward, meeting Minho's hostile gaze with calm determination. You think I'm weak because I'm not violent? Because I choose love over cruelty? That's the mistake everyone keeps making. Strength isn't about how much pain you can inflict. It's about how much you can endure and still choose kindness. It's about fighting for the people you love instead of fighting because you're afraid. You're not strong, Minho. You're just scared and alone. And that's why you lost. The room fell silent. Minho stared at her like he'd been slapped, and Dae-Hyun's grip on her hand tightened with emotion. Finally, Minho stood. This isn't over. Yes, Dae-Hyun said quietly. It is. Security will escort you out. If you come near my wife again, I won't let the elders handle it. I will. And you know exactly what that means. Minho left without another word, his shoulders tight with defeated rage. When the door closed behind him, Dae-Hyun turned to Amara with something like awe in his eyes. That was incredible. That was terrifying, Amara corrected, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. But someone needed to say it. He was right about one thing, Dae-Hyun said, pulling her close. You did change me. You made me soft, in the best way. You made me remember that there's more to strength than violence. You made me want to be better. You were already better, Amara said. You just needed someone to remind you. They went home that night, exhausted but victorious. The battle wasn't completely over. There would be legal proceedings, press statements, and ongoing security concerns. But the immediate threat was neutralized. Minho was powerless, and Amara and Dae-Hyun had proven, once again, that they were stronger together than anyone expected. 6 weeks later, Amara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at a positive pregnancy test. Her hand trembled as she set it on the counter. She'd suspected for a week, but seeing the confirmation made it real in a way that stole her breath. She was pregnant. They were going to have a baby, a child who would inherit both the Kang legacy and all the complications that came with it. She heard Dae-Hyun's footsteps in the bedroom, heard him call her name. She picked up the test and walked out to meet him, her heart pounding. We need to talk, she said. Dae-Hyun's expression immediately shifted to concern. What's wrong? Instead of answering, Amara held out the test. For a long moment, Dae-Hyun just stared at it, processing. Then his eyes lifted to hers, wide with shock and wonder and something that looked almost like fear. "You're pregnant," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes. We're having a baby. Yes." Dae-Hyun crossed the space between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face, his eyes searching hers. "How do you feel about this?" "Terrified," Amara admitted. "Happy. Overwhelmed. Wondering if we're ready. Knowing we probably aren't, but deciding we will be anyway. How do you feel?" "The same," Dae-Hyun said, a smile breaking across his face. Genuine, unguarded, beautiful. "Exactly the same. Plus terrified again for emphasis." They both started laughing, holding each other tightly, feeling the weight and wonder of this new development. "The press is going to lose their minds," Amara said. "Let them," Dae-Hyun replied, echoing her words from weeks ago. "We've survived everything they've thrown at us so far." "True. Although I'm fairly sure pregnancy is going to be harder than gunfights." "I'll be there for every moment," Dae-Hyun promised, his hand moving to rest gently on her still flat stomach. Morning sickness, weird cravings, emotional breakdowns, labor, all of it. "You're not doing this alone." "We're partners," Amara agreed. "Always," Dae-Hyun said, kissing her softly. "In everything." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, thinking about the future they were building. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, threats, moments of doubt. But they'd faced impossible odds before and come out stronger. This was just the next chapter. And Amara couldn't wait to see what came next. 3 months later, Amara stood at the window of the penthouse, one hand resting on her small but visible baby bump, watching Seoul's lights sparkle in the evening darkness. Behind her, Dae-Hyun was on a video call with his security team, discussing protocols for when the baby arrived. His voice was calm and controlled, but Amara caught the undercurrent of protective fierceness that had only intensified since learning about the pregnancy. Their life had settled into something almost resembling normal, or at least their version of normal. The press had finally moved on to other scandals. Amara's fashion line had launched to surprising success, with Korean celebrities eager to wear designs by the famous CEO's wife. Dae-Hyun's company was thriving, and his legal separation from his family's criminal past was complete. But normal was relative. They still had security details. They still got recognized everywhere. And there were still people in the shadows who hadn't forgotten or forgiven. Dae-Hyun ended his call and came to stand behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his hands covering hers on her stomach. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured against her ear. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Amara said. 6 months ago, I was crying in a wedding dress, married to a stranger who wouldn't even look at me. And now you're stuck with me forever," Dae-Hyun finished, his tone light but his grip tightening slightly. "Having my child, building a life together, still dealing with occasional death threats. Don't forget the viral scandal that started it all," Amara added with dark humor. "That was fun. In retrospect, I should thank whoever leaked that recording," Dae-Hyun said thoughtfully. "If they hadn't, we might have stayed distant and cold for years. We might never have built what we have now. You're saying public humiliation was good for our relationship. I'm saying that sometimes the worst things lead to the best outcomes. If you're brave enough to face them together." Amara turned in his arms to look at him properly. "When did you become so wise?" "I married a woman who taught me that strength comes in many forms," Dae-Hyun said seriously. "That fighting for love is harder and braver than fighting out of fear. That choosing vulnerability is the most courageous thing you can do. I'm just repeating the lessons you've taught me." Tears pricked Amara's eyes. Pregnancy hormones made her cry at everything these days. "I love you, even when you make me cry with sweet words." "I love you too," Dae-Hyun said, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "Even when you wake me up at 3 a.m. demanding specific Nigerian foods that don't exist in Seoul." "You found them somehow," Amara pointed out. "Because you're worth flying them in from Lagos," Dae-Hyun said simply. They kissed softly, no longer the tentative connection of new lovers but the comfortable intimacy of true partners. When they broke apart, Amara noticed Dae-Hyun was smiling in that secretive way he had when he was planning something. "What?" she demanded. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Well, for us. but technically for you. Amara took the box with shaking hands. Inside was a ring, not the massive diamond he'd given her at their wedding, but something more personal. A gold band inlaid with small stones in Nigerian and Korean patterns, blending their cultures into one beautiful design. This is a new ring for a new marriage, Dae-Hyun explained. The first one was duty and obligation. This one is choice. So I'm asking you properly, the way I should have from the beginning, Amara, will you marry me? Will you choose this life with me, knowing all its complications and dangers and imperfections? Will you be my wife not because a contract says so, but because you want to? Amara was crying again, harder this time, but they were happy tears. You already married me. We're already pregnant. This is completely unnecessary. I know, Dae-Hyun said, his own eyes suspiciously bright. But I need to do it right. I need you to know that you have a choice. That you always have a choice. Then yes, Amara said, holding out her hand. 1,000 times yes. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this beautiful, complicated, impossible life we're building together. Dae-Hyun slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, just like them, once they'd stopped fighting against each other and started fighting together. The epilogue to their story came 6 months later, in a private hospital room with morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Amara held their daughter, tiny, perfect, screaming her outrage at the world, and felt her heart expand to impossible dimensions. Dae-Hyun sat beside her on the bed, one arm around her shoulders, his other hand gently stroking their daughter's soft black hair. She has your eyes, Amara said, exhausted but exhilarated. She has your spirit, Dae-Hyun countered, watching with wonder as their daughter's cries gradually settled. Listen to those lungs. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with. God help us both, Amara said with a tired laugh. They'd chosen the name together, Minera. Min from Dae-Hyun's lost love, honoring the past while building the future. Era from Amara's middle name, connecting their daughter to both her parents' heritage. A perfect bridge between two worlds. Do you ever regret it? Dae-Hyun asked quietly. Being forced into this marriage. Everything you've had to survive because of me. Amara looked at him, this complicated, damaged, beautiful man who'd learned to love again because of her. This partner who'd stood beside her through scandals and violence and family betrayals. This father who was already looking at their daughter like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Not for a second, she said firmly. We weren't given a choice at the beginning, but we chose each other every day after that. And I choose you again, every single time. Dae-Hyun kissed her forehead, then his daughter's, his expression peaceful in a way Amara had never seen before. Then we won. Against all the odds, despite everything that tried to break us, we won. We did, Amara agreed, settling back against the pillows with her daughter in her arms and her husband beside her. And this is just the beginning. Outside the hospital room, security guards stood watch. Somewhere in Seoul, press were already gathering, eager for photos of the CEO's new heir. In Lagos, Amara's family were preparing to fly in to meet their granddaughter. And in the shadows, there would always be threats, complications, challenges to face. But in that quiet moment, none of it mattered. There was just Amara, Dae-Hyun, and Minera, a family forged from impossible circumstances, strengthened by fire, bound together by choice. Their story had started with a scandal and a scream. It had evolved through violence and vulnerability, through passion and pain. And now, holding their daughter between them, they were writing a new chapter. One where love won over fear. Where family meant more than blood. Where two people from different worlds built something entirely new together. The forced marriage had become real. The cold husband had learned to love. The frightened bride had become a warrior. And together, they created something beautiful from something broken. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was theirs. And that was enough. If you loved Amara and Dae-Hyun's journey from a forced marriage to true love, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intense romance stories with twists you won't see coming. Drop a comment below and tell us, would you have fought alongside your husband like Amara did, or would you have run? And what do you think happens next? Will Minho return for revenge, or will a new threat emerge to challenge their hard-won happiness? Let us know your theories, and we'll see you in the next story.